Salam alaikum. Alhamdulillah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Busy bee, but
MashaAllah, as they say, better busy than idle, right?
true.
MashaAllah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Very, very excited for tonight's conversation. Very happy to be here. I know that we're supposed to be offering kind of some 2024 capstone reflections and then having a conversation about, opportunities and perhaps even some risk and just projections for 2025. Man, I can't believe 2025 is already here. I can't believe 2025 is already here. Here we are. But what if you had to think about some thematic takeaways from 2024? What are some of your initial impressions? What are some of the first things that come to mind?
SubhanAllah, I feel like honestly this year, especially with like the whole election cycle, it was a real, and also in the light of like Palestine and the pro-Palestine movement, I feel like this was a year of like a wake-up call for the American Muslim community. Not to be like negative, but that's what I think of, because I honestly feel like for a long time, like the American Muslim community has been, I don't want to say asleep, but like very comfortable. I think very comfortable in like just like being part of like the American story. Like, it was a lot about assimilation growing up. Like, how can we fit in? How can we, be like the, what the West is, right? And obviously, like as Muslims who are American, like we are American, but at the same time, I think it's that whole idea of like the American story that we want to fit in, right? We don't want to be our own community. And I think this year, like with pro-Palestine and then also with the election, I feel like there was a little bit of an awakening of like, wait a second, we're not going to always be fully fitting in. Like everyone's not going to accept us for who we are, just as much as we can want to accommodate and assimilate and all these things. I feel like there's been a wake-up call to say, we're really different and people actually do see us as different. So how do we like set ourselves apart and not just try to like play into the story, right? And I feel like the election, for example, was something that we really saw, because for a long time, like growing up, Muslims were just like, okay, we're just Democrats. And now you see that, the Democratic Party isn't necessarily just giving you what you like, just because you're not a hard Republican, like everybody's not just giving you what you want, right? And so you have to say, like, what do we want, and how do we become like major stakeholders? And like the college students, for example, who are protesting on campuses, like, you can just see this kind of shift of saying, from trying to just assimilate and we just want to be as American as possible, we're not any different than you, to people now saying like, okay, we are different because people are not accepting us, so how do we become our own community and like stand on our own 2 feet in a sense? So that's what I think, honestly.
La ilaha illallah. No, those are some very, I think, insightful and thoughtful reflections. I don't think that the American Islamic project has been one of trying to seamlessly fit in since 9/11, right, which was 24 years ago. I think that our community is consistently reminded that we are not supposed to be a domesticated community. We're supposed to be, a religious community is at its best when it is the conscience, the moral conscience of, the larger, the greater, the community that it, inhabits or shares, with its, neighbors. And so you had 9/11, and then you had the emergence of Daesh, you had the emergence of ISIS, then you had this latest iteration. I mean, the genocide in Palestine is not new. This has been going on for 75 years. But this latest iteration of it, I think, really, because of our access to what's taking place there on the ground through TikTok and other, more democratic, platforms and forms of media, I think this one just really hit us hard. I think it was a wake-up call for us. I think that, I'll say it was a wake-up call for some of us. I don't even think all of us, needed to be awakened, to that reality. But then again, I do say that from a position of privilege. Being a Black American, there has never been a contradiction for me between being a community that is distinct, being a community of dissent, a community of protest, and being completely at home in being American, right?
Mm-hmm.
Still feeling very much a deep association with America, not as a government or a set of foreign policies, but as you know, as I was mentioning to some guests I had at my place yesterday, we share a subjectivity, right? This is my home. I've always identified with America as home, but that doesn't mean all of the cheap, two-dimensional political sloganeering and love it or leave it and the
Yeah.
jingoism and the flag waving. None of that has been a part of my, American, that kind of, I would call it a very cheap, not a deep patriotism has ever been a part of my expression of being American, but I've never felt alienated, in America, just
Yeah.
because I've always seen myself as being at odds with aspects of America's dominant culture. Some Muslims, I think, and part of this, I think, is maybe not completely identifying with that historical narrative. And why, look, I'm gonna say something here, like it's just me and you, right? I'm gonna say something here like it's just me and you. Black Americans and white Americans have a very distinct history, and our histories are intertwined, in a way that all of us know. We all know when someone is using coded language. Someone says law and order.
Yeah.
We have a set of we have a history. We have a set of cultural motifs. There's a well-worn, even hackneyed political jargon, and then this is a narrative that cannot be disaggregated. Black America and white America, and there's still a lot that is unresolved, a lot that needs to be reconciled inside of that narrative. People coming into America that aren't from those distinct communities, it's not my expectation that they would, identify with the historical narrative of Black Americans. It's not, it's like it's almost like why, I mean, if you're not black, you're not white, and this is not, Black American, white American, and this is not a part of your historical legacy. This isn't something you've inherited, a set of unresolved historical issues, everything from bank redlining to Jim Crow, Jane Crow. We're still wrestling with a lot of those issues and the impact of those issues. The Homestead Act, the GI Bill. I mean, we're still wrestling with a lot of that. But if you were somebody entering America in the 1960s as a person from the Indian subcontinent or from one of the Muslim majority countries in the Levant or North Africa, no, I'm just saying, unless, and this is the thing, unless you are a person that is very intentional, and I would say intentional in a prophetic way. You're very intentional about proclaiming and declaring your allegiance to the less fortunate. That when you look at this setup, not even knowing all of the historical dynamics, your loyalty is just with those that are disadvantaged, with those that have less. But those kinds of people are rare, right? Most people, especially entering the United States, they're thinking about the upward mobility of their families and their communities. Why would I think about social justice and this kind of, righting these historical wrongs and, the maldistribution of wealth in America? And I'm trying to get some wealth in America. I get it. But I think that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just has something different for the destiny of this community. You know,
Yeah.
I get I would say it's not a natural course for a person that, you know, came into this country thinking about, you know, I mean, if even like being connected to Muslim countries abroad,
Mm.
it's like yes and no, right? I saw certain aspects, not certain aspects, so certain excerpts of Hassan Minhaj, his most recent stand-up special, and he said something that was, you know, I thought it was, you know, a stroke of comedic genius. He said, look, when people enter America as immigrants, right? He said there are four things, and I'm probably misquoting him, but you know,
Mm.
there are four things that they want from a political candidate. He might have even said presidential candidate.
Mm.
He said one, they want a green card. They want a green card. I mean, they want a green card, or they want citizenship. They want naturalization. I want a green card. I want naturalization. I want residence in America. Right.
Mm-hmm.
He said two, I want you to believe in God. Right? I want you to believe in God. He said three, I can hear myself. There's like an echo.
I think maybe, let me check. It might be my mic. I'll turn it off for a second.
Oh, okay. Right. He said two, I want you to believe in God. He said three, don't bomb, don't attack my country of origin. Right. Then he said something for number four that I don't remember. But then he said, if you give me one, I'll let you do number three. Right. Which was like, ooh, right. Like if you give me citizenship, if you give me naturalization, the idea that, you know, you're going to be sponsoring a genocide of, you know, my co-religionists, people from, you know, my, you know, ethnic community, etc. You know, this becomes something that they can countenance. And I'm not, again, I'm not here to blame. I'm not here to say, you know, this isn't what this is about. I understand a person fleeing political persecution and wanting to live in a place that they can earn an honest day's, you know, wage for an honest day's work. No, there's no shaming of anyone with regard to that. But you have to recognize that speaking on matters of justice publicly should not be seen as an inconvenience to your project of accumulating some wealth and some privilege in the United States of America. Right? It's not like, oh man, if only not 9/11, if only not ISIS, if only not now Palestine, we could just get on with establishing our families and making the money and you know, matriculating into prestigious colleges. And no, I think as a Muslim of conscience, you know, you're supposed to want more. And I think a lot of these geopolitical incidents for some of us, that's something we get in our milk. That's something we get in our blood.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I feel like I've spoken too much already. But you know, but you know, some of these same criticisms have historically been leveled at the Black middle class as well. People that, you know, if I make it, I don't really have. So I think that temptation of allowing your success, allowing your arrival to kind of be a source of this kind of amnesia about where you're coming from, or this source of blindness, allowing that to obscure the injustice that you see in front of you, this is a perennial human trial, man. People that are winning or trying to win the game, it is a challenge for them to call out the injustice that is inherent to the game.
Mm-hmm.
If you're winning the game, like if it's working well for you, it's harder to say, wait, hold on, this ain't right. But I think Allah is forcing our community to say, wait, hold on. You know, we got the houses, we got the cars, we have the disposable income, we're taking the vacations, but this still ain't right. This ain't right. I think because Allah wants us to be more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you said, some of us we're raised like that. Like, I feel like for people in my generation, I feel like this is a wake up call, because for the children of immigrants that grew up like this, they heard the whole story of get out, when you get older, you're gonna go to college and get a good job and try to go to a prestigious college and all these things. And then now we're in these colleges, you made it, but now they hate you. Your professors are talking about how your country, if you're from any XYZ country, that it's okay for things to be the way that they are, right? And so people, I think, are now having to reckon with, okay, what is my purpose in being here, right? And I feel like it's really interesting to see how people are changing their mindsets, because to me, these were conversations that we were having in 2020 during George Floyd, right? About, for example, people talking is it allowed for Muslims to protest, right? And now everyone who have people who are saying, oh, it's not allowed, are now go out there and go on your college campuses. So it's very interesting to see okay, this is what makes the community go. And I think eventually we're going to have conversations about, okay, well, what are some of the inherent biases that we see in having that mindset? It's okay for this, but not for this. When are we really about justice, or what are we really about here, right? And,
I was talking with a colleague of mine, a scholar, and just I think a man of great virtue and great character, but he didn't give me permission to mention his quote publicly, so I won't say who he is. But he was commenting on, and by the way, I wanted to say that one of the themes for 2024 for me has been joy and pain, right? Because you had the pain and the continuing pain of Philistine, and also the joy of Syria, right? It's been which it's crazy. There's an artist way too old for you probably to know who he is, but his name is Frankie Beverly. He died in 2024. Yeah, he died in 2024, and one of his most notable songs was called "Joy and Pain." But but we were commenting on just this spontaneous outpour of joy that you saw from Muslims all over the world at the news that Syria had been liberated from not only Bashar al-Assad, but the Assad family, with Hafid al-Assad, before, his son. So we're talking 50 years of minority rule, right? 50 years of a brutal fascist dictatorship, right? And very heavy-handed. And, looking online, people waving flags, people singing songs, people dancing in celebration. It was really something to see. And they were unapologetically waving Syrian flags. They weren't waving flags that said La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. So, they were Syrian, as they should.
Yeah.
But for the same elements of our community, that when we in the past spoke about issues of concern to Black communities, would say that this was almost an irreligious nationalism, right? How could you? I'm thinking, somehow your nationalism doesn't have the same irreligious status as mine. Supposedly, it's maybe you think the difference is that that's a majority Muslim country or something. I don't really know what to say to that. I know that I was equally happy for Syria and the Syrian people, but it did put in perspective for me how, as a community, we have to get serious about some self-determination in the United States. I'm talking about Muslims broadly. I'm not saying just not just I'm not talking about Black, American Muslims specifically, but Muslims broadly in America. I was thinking, what will give us that kind of togetherness, that kind of I'm thinking Asabiya, but Asabiya has such a negative connotation. But what
I think it's like this idea that like we are one community and like what's gonna bring
what will give us that, what you're seeing in Syria, what will give us that feeling like we're together in the way that they're together, and it is regionally specific, it is culturally specific, but it is totally consistent with their belief in Allah and His Messenger. I just think that we're in need of something like that.
I think it's really about like reconnecting back to the tradition. I feel like honestly, I've been talking to people about this, and I'm like, really, there's nothing else that we can do except like reconnect back with Allah and His Prophet, right? Like we have to do that because that's our like foundation for everything. And if we're gonna try to build bridges on like other things, I think this just not gonna work because we're always gonna have some other priority, right? So it's gonna be like my cultural community or my socioeconomic status or whatever that is. Like that's always gonna come into play if you just try to build bridges off of like, we share, I don't say values, but like we share similar interests and all these things. But at the end of the day, those don't last very long. Like to me, it always has to be like nothing would last except for the idea that like we're all believers, right? And I was like thinking about this because I was going over Sira with Ustadh Zainab, and like we were talking about like some of the battles like Badr and Uhud, and I was just like, it's just so interesting that these people like the Ansar, for example, are so willing to put their lives on the line for like not just the Prophet but from like for the Muhajirin, which like of course all Arab, but at the same time like this is I'm from here, you're from there, like we're the only thing that's keeping us. The only thing that's like making us really get together is like our love for Allah and His Prophet and the Quran. And so that's what really like has to be our foundation too. And I think we're just trying to do a lot of other things. Even to me, like the social justice thing, it does bring a lot of people together. Or I care for Palestine and all these things. But at the same time, like what hopefully the reason is because it's a land that is a holy land and because, people's lives are sacred. But at the same time, like how are we going to be able to address a lot of these problems? I think we're not going to be able to do it without reconnecting back to the tradition, which was why like knowledge is so important. And I think that's something for me that I feel like is a theme of 2024, maybe because I'm in education, but I'm just like, wow, like we really, really, really need to get back to basics of learning about the tradition, or this is just not going to work. Like we're going to keep trying different things.
I agree with you. And in addition to knowledge and getting back, to the tradition, I think that we have to redefine what unity looks like. I think that, in a community of people of different backgrounds, different histories, even some different sets of priorities, right? Different challenges, different opportunities. How do we create a kind of unity that brings us all together but respects the individual missions of our respective communities? Meaning, I don't think that a community in Orange County needs to necessarily have the same priorities as a community in Cook County, where I live in Chicago. Maybe, trying to secure some benefits that will serve the Muslim community there necessitates different strategies, different alliances, different moves. But how do we create, a shared kind of language and discourse so that we know, okay, on the basis of these principles, we're all on the same team, right? We all want these overarching objectives. These are all things that we're trying to do. How that looks in your context and how that looks in your context and how that looks in your context, we allow for some variance, in that regard. I think this should be, getting all of these consensus builders, together that represent the Muslim community as a broad and diverse demographic I think this is a good area of focus for 2025. So that we know, okay, because I think that sometimes if you don't have that kind of unity, especially in this this age of kind of a hyper tribalistic, hyper factional human race, it's very easy to see somebody advocating a certain political position and just think, okay, that's the dividing line between me and them right there. Right. That issue right there that's it. Right. And you're thinking, no, I mean, this is supposed to be an area that we have a little more than other people to still be connected. Some people's like, okay, I see you want to ban the teaching of critical race theory in public colleges. That's it. Me and you can't be friends anymore. I don't want to. It's like, hey, it's like what? Like really? Like, really? Damn, that's pretty intense. Or I saw that you voted for Kamala Harris, so there was something on your page with regard to supporting Harris, and that she was a supporter of the genocide that took place in Palestine. That's it. We can, and I think that we have to find a way of negotiating some of these serious differences, but nonetheless not insurmountable differences. They're not insurmountable differences. They're serious differences.
Like you said, like I think there's like people don't know how to have dialogue. That's like normal. It's like the assumption is like if I have a different opinion, then your opinion is wrong, not just wrong, but like immoral, where I think that's just like become an issue, right? And I feel like I see this across the board in a lot of things, like when it comes to culture, when it comes to gender. I feel like maybe because I'm in the younger generation, like one of the biggest like issues that we see, at least online, is like this like gender war. And it's not
help me with that. When did that become a thing? And why do you think it's such a thing? When did that become a thing?
I don't know. I have my biases, I think, but I honestly don't know. I think that people just feel unheard. I think that's what it is. I think people generally feel unheard, like on both sides. I mean, to me, there's like shouldn't be sides. Like we're all, whatever. But on both sides, people feel unheard, and so then it becomes a thing of like, well, I need to stake my claim, and I need to stake my claim what my opinion is, but my opinion, I think social media honestly has ruined it. That's like a big thing, because my opinion is not just the right opinion, but your opinion is wrong, and your opinion is also un-Islamic. So like you hear like this idea of like, okay, people who like, for women, right? Okay, women who talk about feminism, like that's un-Islamic automatically. Like not even people can't even define feminism, right? But it's like that's un-Islamic automatically. And then even some of the ideas, I guess, on the other side too, is like people assume certain things about like like I don't want to say like the red pill movement, but certain like ideas going on in a lot of like the guys who are very like this like masculine kind of thing. It's like that's un-Islamic. That's not how the Prophet was. Like all these it's like very like polarizing, and it's crazy because I think that people don't know how to have like civil conversation, because there's also a big like, push to be like,
honestly, what it reminds me of, the Quran is so illuminating. Allah Ta'ala talks about these two angels named Harut and Marut. Right? They came, they visited the people during the time of Sulaiman. And Allah mentioned of the effects of the incantations, right? They were teaching these kind of this speech. It was magic through incantations, spells. One of the effects was يُفَرِّقُونَ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ. It divided husband and wife. That it was some kind of language that divided husband and wife. I almost see this current debate about gender as kind of like that magic. يُفَرِّقُونَ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ. It's something. Because it does, because honestly, it's almost like whenever men and women are talking about each other in silos, we're in trouble. Whenever we hear, because the fact of the matter is that is the problem, right? The fact that the point of departure is this adversarial discourse, this kind of, instead of listening to each other. And see, it is my sense that anonymity, right, when you can't really see the person that you're talking to, and I think there's something very tribalistic about social media. It produces not a conversation, but a shouting match, right? Who can, who can shout the loudest? And we're talking about men and women, right? We it's like ba'duhum awliya'u ba'd. They are protecting friends of one another. Even the I don't, as long as, if a person is practicing Islam, right? If a person isn't practicing Islam, maybe they have all kinds of, we'll call them alternative ways of getting their of getting their need for emotional, physical intimacy maybe met. But if a person is practicing Islam and practicing Islam according to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the way that they want to get those emotional, physical, and other needs for different kinds of intimacy, companionship met is through a man or a woman, a man, a woman, a woman, a man. So how do you think you're going to achieve that in a shouting match? I don't, it's kind of like, how are you supposed to get what you need from a man shouting down men? And how are you supposed to get what you need from a woman shouting down women? I mean, I would think that whatever the two sides want, we should be trying to entreat each other. Can I impress upon you what would make your companionship more valuable to me if I'm a man? And if I'm a woman, can I impress upon you what kind of attitudes, positions, behaviors, dispositions would make your companionship more valuable to me? That's what we're all trying to say. When everything else is nonsense. I think I see.
I feel like, though, the problem is like this issue of identity. I've like been like thinking about this a lot. Like, why do people go into these like weird factions? Like, you can make it about anything. It can be about gender. It can be about social class. It can be about culture. But like you can be happy that you're a guy, happy that you're a girl, whatever. Like, happy that you're whatever race it is. But like, why do people go so deep into it? Like, And I feel like it's like crazy. But I feel like it's just like how Allah's made us, right? Like, Allah's made us to be people who like have some kind of identity and we attach to it. The issue is then what becomes your identity, right? So for us, like, we believe that your identity should be that what Allah like calls you to, right? Which is like to be a believer. And so your identity as a believer is like number one thing. Everything else that's in like under that, whether it's your gender, your race, your social class, should be informed by first like my main identity, which is a believer. I feel like we're not raising people to have that idea of like this is what your main identity is and everything else informs that. So your ideas about men and women should be in the light of, well, you're a believer and this is what we believe about men and women, right? But now it's like I'm a man or I'm a woman, and what I believe about one, Islam, but also about the opposite gender is like based off of my gender, not based off of my belief in Allah, right? And I feel like that's something when we talk about knowledge, like that's what we really have to go back to, is like teaching people about like who they are, right? And I remember talking to Sheikh Mendes about this one time, about like he was saying, a lot of us, we go into teaching and we teach immediately, like teach Aqidah or teach fiqh or something, and he's like, but Ghazali really talks about we need to be teaching people about who they are, well, like who you are and then who Allah is, because once you know who you are, then you're able to understand and like identify and see the world in that lens. But I think we don't teach people about who they are.
But the other thing that I think is critical there is that when you're talking about something like, because to me, and this is what I mean. Forgive me if I sound a little bit cynical. It's only because I am. It's only because I am. No, I mean, if we're talking about men and women in, like, say, a professional context, seems pretty clear to me. Be respectful. Equal work for equal pay. I mean, that doesn't seem. I hope that's not controversial. It shouldn't be controversial to a Muslim. What I mean? The equal work for equal pay. Be collegial, be respectful, man, woman, easy done. If you're talking about men and women in a public context, equal access to facilities and I mean, I don't think that's much really of an issue. Most of this conversation comes down to the domestic and romantic context. It's not, what do we when we talk about like men, women? Sometimes, I think we get the sense that these positions are being overstated, right? It's not like the women are talking about men broadly, and it's not like men are talking about women. They're talking about in the context of relationship and family. Mostly, that's what most of this comes down to. It's
That's true.
right. I mean, I'm not saying that those other issues don't also pop up. Sometimes professional context, public context, but a lot of this conversation is about the domestic sphere, romantic context, women and men. So part of me feels like a lot of this is just unresolved. Kind of tension that frustration that's just expressing itself in this kind of political cultural warrior kind of modality. It's like sometimes I hear brothers and I'm just like, if it's been hard for you to get married, you can just say that, man. If it's been hard, you don't have to launch, you don't have to launch a screed against, womankind. It's just, hey, it's been difficult for me to find somebody who's on my page. And I think it's, whether your page is more traditional, whether your page is more modern, whether your page is kind of a hybrid, which I think most of us in America have this hybrid, this hybrid approach to traditional and modern modalities of being a husband, being a wife, whatever that is. I don't think it's hard for you to find somebody with whom you fit. There's enough people here. Why you got to yell at everybody else? You want a very traditional wife, why don't you just seek a traditional wife? And if you want a traditional husband, why don't you just seek a traditional husband? Why do you have to talk about everybody like this adventitious arguments about men and women broadly and modern women and modern men? And I don't understand. I mean, maybe I'm just old, but I don't understand.
No, I don't even understand. Like sometimes I'm sitting there, I'm just like, this is like crazy. Like, and I think the reason why it becomes so like contentious in the Muslim context, at least, is because people look for religion to like justify their crazy takes. Like people have like some really like out there opinions about men, women, and it's from unresolved trauma, whatever, like tension, whatever it is, but you use religion to justify it. So you're saying that when someone has a different opinion, or like, they have, maybe they're like more modern women or whatever, or more modern men, like you're like, well, Islamically, that's not what a man should be like, right? Like as a Muslim man, you shouldn't do that, or as a Muslim woman, you shouldn't do that. And so then you trigger people's sense of like, oh, like, am I a bad worship? Like you're assuming that I'm a bad believer, right? Like you're assuming that I'm a bad Muslim, and that's obviously going to trigger people's emotions and feelings and make people angry. And so there is like, to me, it's like this, I think it goes back again to like knowledge of like, okay, what does the tradition say about men and women? And is it so polarizing as you think? And you can't use the tradition to try to justify your means of like, this is what's not allowed and this is what's allowed. But
no, that's a good point. I don't know. Sometimes I just find those conversations. I feel like they are. A lot of them are like, this is a fig leaf. This is, we're having this conversation and using all of this technical jargon, but in reality, you want a partner that appreciates certain a certain kind of division of labor, maybe certain, gestures of respect, certain gestures of care, consideration, and I think you can find that. I think. Well, I mean, that's a whole other issue in terms of the crisis of finding that. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But I think you can. It is perfectly fine as long as it's within the bounds of the permissible for you to lead with what you want without demonizing what somebody else wants. I don't know why. Why not just say, if a sister says, "Well, I'm looking for this certain situation," I don't know what prevents a brother from saying, "Okay, well, that's not what I'm into."
Yeah, just move on.
Oh, you're okay. That's not. No, I'm not. Yeah. No, I'm not interested. And what prevents a woman from saying, "Okay, you're kind of on that. Okay, that's not kind of what I'm looking for." Instead, we'll go online and have these kind of fake philosophical discussions about feminism and red pill. This is a waste. It's so adversarial, and it's unnecessarily adversarial. Just say you're not interested in that.
Move on.
Okay, no, I'm not. No, I'm not with that. No, that's not me. But maybe there's some brother out there that he's more consistent with that approach.
A lot of it's just like a lack of adab. Like, I just feel like people just have a lack of understanding adab of disagreement, understanding adab of like relationships, like relationship with anyone in general, like another Muslim. Like, you don't go because someone has a different opinion and you go blast them out online. Like, that's not appropriate.
I'm just thinking what you say. It's almost like no matter what you're talking about, the fact that you're blasting somebody online for disagreeing with you, for any perceptive person, even if they agree with you on what you're talking about, why would I want a person like that for a spouse? Even if I agree with what he's saying, but I guess when he finds something that he disagrees with me about, is he gonna do that to me? It's like, okay, I agree with you on that point, but if you do find something you disagree with me about, is that what you're gonna do? Oh man, I'm good. I mean, same thing I would say for a woman. Like, okay, I agree with what you're saying with that, but if you do disagree with something I'm saying, this is gonna be your approach.
Not interested.
I'm good. If that's how you express disagreement, yelling online and shouting, insults and put downs and that sort of thing, then yeah, and questioning my iman. What? This is all silly. But on to different. We went off the you think scary. Yeah, scary. No more parties with LA. No, but it was scary. No, but when you got the news, no, see you want to go back in. You got something else?
No, I was gonna say, I was just like, I think these are just like, again, themes, like themes of what we have to work on as a community and what we should be moving forward on is like adab of everything. Like, how do you treat people with adab? Like, how do you, just like very, I feel like adab is something that's so important that we don't focus on as much, even in like places of learning, right? Of like, just knowledge is very important. But adab, I was on a class recently, and the sister from Tareem was saying how, a lot of the shuyukh would say that like your adab should be like your like imagine it like a dish, right? So your adab should be like your flour, and your knowledge should be like salt. And the meaning, like the core of your dish should be adab, like in everything. The core of who you are should be adab. The core of like how you interact with people should be adab, and knowledge should make it better, not make it worse.
Whoa. Man, the scholars of Tareem in particular, man, they, mashallah, just
I was just like, man, like,
where they put them. No, it's all right. I think that adab is something that is learned from heart to heart. You can't, a book, and although we love books, a book is the quintessential artifact of Islamic culture and scholarship is the book. Mm-hmm. But a book can't teach you how to behave. Right? A book can give you knowledge, but a book can't teach you how to carry knowledge. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of what we're seeing too is, these autodidacts, people that have taught themselves. They've done some reading, and they've become erudite. They've become learned, right? But they still don't know how to carry knowledge, right? So whenever I see somebody who has appointed himself an advocate of traditional masculinity, and he's online screaming at women, what traditional man, do that? When did that? I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, player. That's not what we do. That's not it.
It's not even just that. It's not even like the men and women. It's like for everything, right? So I got on Twitter for like 2 days. I had to get off so quickly because I was like, this place is so scary. One of the things that I was seeing was that, like, there's a bunch of people, people who are like, oh, we're like students of knowledge, people of, and they're like fighting about like Ashadism on Twitter, like going off on people about like, on Twitter. And I'm like, this is so terrifying. Like, this is what you'll see them, you like follow a person of knowledge, like, in hashtag, and you're just seeing people like going at each other's throats about like random data points that of course are important, but you're not blasting people on Twitter because of that, right? And so it's just like, what we're not teaching, like what needs to be taught of.
And the thing about it is that what's sad is that the person doing that can't see that they are vulgarizing a noble tradition. Like these are discourses. These are text. These are sciences that men and women put their entire lives into codifying and preserving. And you gonna get on the internet acting like a pro wrestler? No, you gonna get on the internet as the Ric Flair of Aqidah? It's sad, man. I'm thinking to myself, the only thing I can think that will maybe remedy some of this is you have to maybe go apprentice with a craftsman. If you saw the care that this craftsman put into building this bench or this chair, it would be impossible for you to just throw it about like, no. I actually saw what this carpenter put into making this, which informs the way I treat it. But part of that, I think, is and not to get too deep or too heavy, but we're living in the age of the disposable. Everything is disposable, and that was actually one of Marx's predictions, that capitalism would make everything disposable. This is all disposable. What he spoke about was just different layers of alienation. That, like, you guys are talking about these knowledges, but completely alienated from the tradition that produced this knowledge. Because in that tradition, people didn't behave like that. And what they would probably find it shocking is that, yes, I will submit, many of them wrote like that, right? They wrote like that. If you saw their writings, they were unsparing in their criticism of their detractors, people who disagreed with them. But when they met in person, they did not behave like that, because no person of standing in the Muslim community could be a person of standing and actually behave like that.
Yeah.
Right. In my private study, I'll write about the mutashabbiha.
Yeah.
That, the anthropomorphists. But if I met someone like that, they just did not. They were better people than that, man.
Yeah. And I think that's just what we're losing. Like you said, like, people have to apprentice with people. I mean, this is part of why, like, scholarship was the way that it was. Like, you actually spend time with people. You don't just like listen to somebody's podcast and and you just like take things on and just go for it, right? People spend time with people. You spend time with scholarship. You learn the way that they act. You see how they move, and you're like, okay, this is what I should do. It's like, Imam Malik's mother, when she sent him to go study, like, take from their adab before you take from his knowledge. So that's what we should be teaching, but we're not teaching that. So I guess on this point, I was going to say, since we're almost at an hour, what would you say is something that maybe like two things that the American Muslim community should be focusing on really in terms of development for the next like year? Like what should be the core part of the projects?
I like what I've been seeing in terms of the development of institutions.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this period of our development should be marked by moving past the charisma of individuals and trying to grow some institutional strength. Mashallah, we've benefited from some very charismatic, individuals over the years, and I don't want to speak about charisma like it's something negative. It's not. If someone has a special magnetism with which he or she is able to touch people, that's a good thing, but it is very limited. You can't. What can you? It can't extend. It can't transcend that individual. It's like, and I think it's, I always say that charisma is very good for productivity, but it's not as good for reproductivity, right? I think that now, a lot of the scholars that I would call, senior scholars in terms of OG, like OG, 4-star generals. I think, and the reason I call them senior is that they are the scholars who introduced, I think, many of us to this trans-historical story of Islam. Even the people yelling on Twitter about, Ash'arism, right? About, Aqidah. You couldn't have done that 40 years ago.
That's true.
You just couldn't find a group of Muslims that were capable of debating those issues.
Yeah.
Like you actually had people on all sides. I'm acknowledging the whole cornucopia of folks from Sheikh Hamza Yusuf to Sheikh Bilal Phillips that introduced us to this I would say classical conversation about Islam, right? In which we're referencing, schools and books and madhahib and traditional scholars, and I think a lot of them, they're getting older. We're all getting older. I'm getting older. I just don't have much gray hair. But even I can even see the back. The tint is there. The gray is there. It's just the grays are just. They've been delayed in their arrival. We're all getting old. And I think that, while I appreciate those scholars, one of the things that watching their lives has taught me is that success for them is in creating institutions and continue this engagement with whatever aspect of the tradition they emphasize, whether it's knowledge, service, organizing, cultivation of the arts. All of this must be institutionalized. And so I would like to see our community continue, the work of those senior scholars in, maturing and developing, our institutions. And then I would say, secondly, I think that summit that I talked to you about, not uniformity but unity. I think that and I'm speaking for myself personally here. I would like to see more. I would like to believe that we can have communities that are distinct and self-determining, but united. I feel, I would like to, that's that's such a noble goal, right? That, one shouldn't have to dissolve the distinctiveness of their identity, right? As a Black American or a white American, or Latino American. I still say Latino. I don't say Latinx. No, no, you know what I'm saying? I'm just giving you a heads up. You know what I'm saying? But or Latino American, or South Asian American, or Southeast Asian American, Arab American, Continental African American. I think that a kind of cultural distinctiveness is important. I think this kind of cultural and racial agnosticism, like, oh, we're all just Muslim, that doesn't work for me anymore. I'm a Black American Muslim. You understand? That doesn't work for me anymore. And I think that it would be foolish to think that it should work for anybody else. So if I'm very assertive about the fact that, look, I have a history, I have certain perspectives, I have certain fears, right? Certain maybe even points of cultural emphasis, focus. All of these are part of a distinct trajectory, right? But that trajectory is informed by Islam and my membership to the greater Muslim community. I should expect that other communities have a similar set of guiding principles. How do we sit in those without denying them, but still affirm our togetherness? I think that's the project. So that when something like Palestine becomes an issue that all of us, look, this is something that is an outrage to all of us. I think it makes it easier for us to develop strategies to mobilize and to move when we kind of know where each other are, and I would like to see us maybe work on that. So, some in-group solidarity, but in-group solidarity that does not create barriers or boundaries, but an in-group solidarity that leads to the kind of self-respect and pride that makes unity possible. You see, when you feel good about yourself and you're confident, uniting with someone else, there's no fear in that, because you don't feel that you're going to get dissolved. You feel like, no, there's respect across the board. And I think that.
So I'll plug support institutions. Support institutions like Adub to keep those projects going, inshallah. No, I agree. I think especially the first project of like the institutions, I talked to like my peers, and we're just like, all the scholars that we saw as kids like growing up are like getting much older, and you see how much work they put in, subhanallah. Like, I was on a trip, and I saw Dr. Omar was on the trip. He was just talking about his experience, like, as a Muslim when he converted, and how they went overseas. And I was just like, wow, like, mashallah, like, we don't have to do that today. Like, the work that they had to put in, the amount of effort they had to put in, the time that they had to put in to just go and learn like things that now we can like watch on YouTube by them and other people who've learned from them, is like, subhanAllah, is so different. And so it's a blessing, but that we have such access to not just their scholarship, but like the scholarship, like you said, that they brought. But also it's a blessing that we have to take care of, right? Now that we have it, that we have to like make sure that we're supporting the institutions that are doing that, whether it's financially, whether it's, not putting down institutions, going on YouTube and like putting down every institution online, like things like that, and trying to make them better. And in our support in that way, like making them better, saying, okay, these are things that we've seen, they've done such good. How do we help them move forward and not just like shut down all these institutions that's done a lot of work? Because I know that like I wouldn't be who I am like as an individual, even as a believer, if I hadn't been exposed to like the knowledge through like Adem and through Tafsir and through all these other places that, people who had to do work that I don't have to do. I would love to go overseas, but I don't have to right now, in the way that to be able to function as a community member, the way that people had to do before me, right? Like just like listening to their stories, Imam Zayd, Dr. Jackson, I'm like, wow, subhanAllah, like you guys did a lot.
Yeah, no,
So
it's really, and I think it's very important to give that generation their flowers. I know that's an overused expression nowadays. I feel like I'm Nori on Drink Champs, but no, I think it's very important to give them their flowers and just acknowledge, because it's not easy to be a trailblazer, man. It's not easy. When you're walking alone, and sometimes being criticized by the very people you're trying to lead, who maybe don't understand, don't get it. I mean, that's a tough. It's a prophetic path, but it's a tough path.
yeah. So like you said, giving them their flowers, and then us figuring out, I feel like, especially my generation now, you guys have to do it actually first, but my generation, we have to say like, okay, what is our role in this project? Like people have done all this work. Okay,
Mm.
now we're getting the fruits of it, but we have to also keep it going forward, not just sit here and just like, okay, thanks, like, thanks for what you did, and sitting here stagnant and just worrying about ourselves. But how do we also give back to that
Yeah,
project?
yeah, no, we got it. So yeah, I think it's picking up the baton. Picking
Yeah,
up the baton. I think that's the you know yeah, that's it.
that's the message. No.
Yeah,
So I think we
alhamdulillah.
can, inshallah, close out. If you want to make a dua for us, inshallah, and then we'll close out
Bismillah,
the
Bismillah
stream.
ar-Rahman
I'll make some
ar-Rahim.
announcements and then go, inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين جزاكم الله خير. I pray that Allah Ta'ala give us openings and give us victory in this upcoming year, and that He hasten the liberation of Gaza and Palestine, and everywhere else that Muslims are struggling for self-determination, and fighting for um, you know an acknowledgement of their sanctity and their dignity. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen.
All right. Assalamu
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, before we all go, inshallah, I just want to remind everybody to please do support Adam. As Ustadh Ubaydullah said, it's very important that we support the institutions and the work that a lot of our senior scholars have done, whether through monetary means, dua, of course, is very important. And just a reminder that, and as you can see on our website, which we'll post, inshallah, we have the book club coming up. We have our monthly book club. The ALIM summer program applications, I believe, are open. If not, the applications and the interest form is open. So if you are interested in attending, or you know someone who would love to attend or who would really benefit from attending, please do go ahead and fill out that form. If you have questions, you can, of course, message us, email us, whatever it is, inshallah. We appreciate all of you for joining, especially throughout the year. We've had lots of different programs. We're excited, inshallah, to see the future of ALIM. And so we appreciate all of you. All right. Assalamu alaikum.